Next question is one that comes from the grade 12's content, right? This one is about what we call the future value concepts and the present value concepts. These are applications of mathematics. You're going to see why we say they are applications of mathematics. Very nice question indeed that you sent to us. It was about what is called the sinking fund, right? The sinking fund is it's a very beautiful story, right? That talks to the art of using math in your own advantage, right? So let's see what the story is. Before we even get anywhere, because I understand that some of you might have not yet seen any questions that involve financial mathematics or even the stories about compound growth, or compound growth you've seen, but like future value growth, annuities, and as well as present value annuities. You might have not seen those, right? So it's going to be very important for us to work on this a bit slower and try to help you to understand what is the background story behind what we need to do and how we need to align our thinking in the context of this particular question. So before we even go anywhere, the story about the sinking fund is as follows. It's a nice story. Imagine yourself, right, that you actually want to be in the taxi industry, so you want to be one of the mini buses that we have around. So you buy a taxi now, this year, 2020, you buy a taxi that you want to use, right, to transport people. Now, if taxi is part of your business, right, you will agree with me that there is no way you're going to use it forever. Very important. You're going to use the taxi for a certain period of time before you start noticing that it's no longer good it's no longer roadworthy, so you're going to need to replace it, right? So you're going to use it for a certain period of time. Let's just say you give yourself a 5-year time frame to say, I'm going to drive this taxi for 5 years, doing whatever I need to do with it, transporting people. After 5 years, I'm going to need to buy a new one, right? Now, when that happens, you need to keep something in mind, that the old taxi that you bought is depreciating in value every year, right? If you buy it, it might be 400,000 rands. Bottom line is, the more you keep using it, the cheaper and cheaper and cheaper it gets as it depreciates, right? And then while your taxi, the one you're owning, is depreciating, the one at the store is being affected by inflation. And inflation means the value of that particular taxi is actually increasing. The cost of buying a new one is increasing, right? So if you have your old, it's depreciating, the new one is undergoing inflation, becoming more and more and more expensive. Now, at the end of your 5-year term, you want to sell the old one and buy the new one, right? So the difference between the money you're going to get when you sell the old one and the money you need to afford the new one is what we call the sinking fund. That gap between the cost of the new item or asset versus the value of the old one is that gap that you need to get to buy the new one is what we call the sinking fund. So it's a beautiful story. Now, what comes in mind is if I am aware that I'm going to have a gap of a certain amount of money, what do I do? What's the smartest thing that I can do? Do I wait for the 5 years to lapse and then borrow money? Or do I start now saving because I am aware that after 5 years I'm going to need so much in order to afford a new taxi? You see, that's actually how the whole thing is actually going to work out. So whatever we're going to do is going to be revolving around it. That's like the template of the story behind the sinking fund. And most of the time, because you are aware that you're going to need a certain amount of money, which is what we call a sinking fund, you start now saving every month or maybe every quarter, depending on how frequent you want to deposit money, to save towards the sinking fund. So that's actually what is going on, and that's what we're going to be talking about here. Keep that in mind as we're working through this. Right. So let's go through this story and read what is going on here. We are told here that Leboho buys a tractor for an unknown amount of money. Now, allow me to immediately begin here. Allow me to begin here and saying he's going to buy a tractor, right? So we're going to have the old tractor, right? Old tractor. This is the one that is actually owning, that he buys for an unknown amount, versus the new one that is going to need to buy after a certain amount of time. So the new tractor, we're going to talk about it here. Every time there's a question discussing the new tractor, we'll write it there where it says new tractor, right? So this tractor, we don't know what is the amount that he bought it for, right? Okay, let's go back. Now, they're saying she plans to replace this tractor after 5 years. So key important information here. She's going to replace this tractor after 5 years. She bought it for an unknown amount of money. The tractor depreciates by 20% per annum according to reducing balance method. Now, which one is depreciating? Obviously, the one that he bought, the one that is owning, is the one that is undergoing depreciation. This one is definitely going to depreciate. It depreciates for whatever the story that you might be given there. So again, like I say, this is actually a paying question. I'm going to put the variables so that we can start putting them down here, because when an amount or when an item depreciates, it's going to depreciate on compound or simple interest. And when we are undergoing inflation, we are definitely going to have stories of compound growth, right? So that one is depreciating. This one is undergoing inflation. Inflation affected. This one is undergoing inflation, right? Okay, again, this is again another story of a pain situation. We're going to need all those variables that they gave us here. So the first part they told us, they said it depreciates by 20% on reducing balance method. So let's come back. 20% on reducing balance method. The old one is depreciating. 20% is just 0.20 on reducing balance method. That tells you the formula we're going to use is going to be A equals to P into 1 minus I to the power of n. If they said straight line, we're going to use 1 minus I times n. Okay, cool. Right, and then they say to you, the price of the new tractor, now they're talking about the new one, the price of the new tractor is expected to increase by 18% per annum. Okay, cool. Now 18% per annum, that's the rate of inflation of the new tractor. So that's going to be 0.18. Now you guys need to know that inflation is always calculated on a compound basis. All items that inflate and even population growth is always on compound basis. Populations increase on compound basis. Inflation is also on compound basis. It's not straight line. It would always be compound formula, right? Okay, and then they are saying to us here, she calculates that if she deposits 8,000. Now, this information they're giving us here is no longer about the tractor depreciating and the tractor inflating. The part that you see here is discussing her ideas of replacing this item later. She calculates that if she deposits 8,000 rands into a sinking fund at the end of each month, it will exactly provide for the shortfall 5 years from now. So she's going to conduct some investment for the sinking fund. This is about the sinking fund and this story. We will talk about it a bit later, right? When we meet any question that talks about the sinking fund. Okay, the first question says we need to calculate the scrap value of the tractor after 5 years in terms of X. Okay, we don't know what the original price of the item is. We were told that it's X, so I'm going to put X on both those two P values. We are looking for the values later. They said scrap value. So scrap value is obviously the value of the item after it has depreciated. So we are on the left of our table of old versus new, right? So I'm going to be there. My P value is X. I've got 1 minus, my interest is 0.2 to the power of n. This is running for 5 years, right? So I'm going to have an answer here of X multiplied by 1 minus 0.2 to the power of 5. Let's see if this is a nasty number, right? So 1 minus 0.2 gives you obviously 0.8. If you raise that to the power of 5, it becomes a terrible number, which is not that terrible. All right, 0.32 768, 0.32768 times X, so that X will come here. So this is the value after depreciation. It's the value of this particular tractor after it has depreciated. That will be its scrap value. So 0.32768X is what we are ending up with here as the scrap value in terms of X. That will be the answer for number 1, right? Going on to the second part, we are told now that we need to determine the price of the new tractor after 5 years in terms of X. So again, this is growing for 5 years. So we want to know if an item is worth X rands and it grows at 0.18 for a period of 5 years. What will it be in total? The inflated value of this is going to be what after 5 years? So that's actually obviously 1.18 to the power of 5. So you go to your calculator, you try and figure out 1 plus 0.18 will be 1.18. We need to raise that 1.18 to the power of 5 years. We're ending up with a very terrible answer of 2.2 28, whatever the case you might have there. Okay, fine. So 2.2877. So, okay, let me leave it as 1.18 to the power of 5x, right? That's what I want it to be, which you can obviously write as 2877. Of course, there's decimals that I skipped there, so whenever I need to use this number, I'll always come back to this one that is not rounded off because it is the one that you're looking for. In the context of exams, if they're asking you to write the final answer, it will have to be to 2 decimal places, so which means your final answer will then be 2.29x because you are instructed to always round off your answers to 2 decimal places, and that will be the solution for number 2. Right. Now, going to the third part. Now, they say calculate the amount accumulated in the sinking fund, right? The amount accumulated in the sinking fund after 5 years, right? So what is the story about the sinking fund? Let's go back to see what they said in the love letter about the sinking fund. And that story is happening here. Let me put a nice box so that we only focus on what is in the box. She calculates that if she deposits 8,000 rands into the sinking fund, so that's the amount of money that she's going to deposit every month. So she's depositing 8,000 rands. She's going to do the deposit for a period of 5 years. And then the bank is offering her 10% per annum compounded monthly. Right. So all that information is what I'm going to write down. And I'm going to say this to you. For number 3, we will need to use what we call the future value annuity. Right. This is a proper example that uses the future value. This is a future value annuity. What is the story about annuities? Well, annuities have got 3 demands. Number 1, it's a situation where there's periodic payments of the same amount, right, of money over the same, at the same frequency, right? Same amount, same frequency into the same account where there's no changes that are occurring, right? And then it must be continuous. Very, very important. Unlimited for, it's not unlimited, limited at a certain point, but obviously ongoing payments that you're making. So keep that in mind. If you keep depositing into an account a certain amount, a fixed amount of money for a fixed frequency, like either every month you're putting the same amount, or every quarter you're putting the same amount, or every year you're putting the same amount into the same account, we will use the future value annuity to try and figure out how much you'll have at the end of your investment. Very important. Now, the key important things that you need to keep in mind when you're working with these annuities is that the first payment is always made in 1 period's time. So if you're going to be making monthly payment and we're signing a deal now, the first payment is made in 1 month's time. So there's a gap that you need to allow because that's how the formulas are structured. When your teachers teach you this and they show you how this formula of the future value is derived from the sequence and series formula of a geometric pattern, you will see why we need to have that gap. Unfortunately, we don't have time for that in this particular show, so maybe next time we'll get a chance to show you where the formula comes from. But for us, it's going to be a future value annuity. Why? Because we are moving from nothing to try and raise money. We're raising money from nothing towards something by making periodic, continuous payment into the same amount over the same frequency, which means over monthly in this case. Right. So how does the future value formula work? Well, it's very easy. They work nicely if you have timelines like this. This is T0, and then at T1, we're going to have T2, we're going to have T3, and the last payment is always made N years. This person is going to run for 5 years, right? So the first amount is made here. This is where the first amount is made. The second amount is going to be made here. The third amount is going to be made there. And the last amount is made there. So we are told that this lady is paying 8K every time. So she's going to be paying 8,000. She's going to pay another 8,000. She's going to pay another 8,000. And then the last 8,000, she's going to pay it at the time where she's supposed to come and collect whatever her savings were. All right? So this is the story that we actually have to worry about. Now, in the context of the future value, the formula we're using is the future value is always given by x into 1 plus I to the power of n minus 1 divided by I. This is available in your information sheet, aka the formula sheet. Now, what is X? X is the amount of money that you're paying every month. This is your periodic payment. In our question, we were told that this lovely lady is paying X 8,000 rands every month. So that means our X value is going to be 8,000, right? Open brackets twice, 1 plus my interest here was given to us as 10%. The story that we have for the annuity, they said is 10%. That's actually 0.10. But the question says compounded monthly, so we need to divide our I by 12 to the number of years. How long is this running? It's running for 5 years, but it's running monthly. So 5 times 12 will give you exactly 60 months that you need to worry about here. So this is going to run for 60 minus 1, and then everything definitely needs to be divided by that interest you see there, which is 0.10 all over 12. That's actually what your interest is going to be. Very important for you to keep that in mind. If you like, you can work out what is 0.1 divided by 12, but sometimes these numbers come out and they're very terrible, right? And I think I'm going to need my numbers here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just confirm that indeed 5 times 12 does give you 60 months. That's why I've got 60 for my end value. And then after that, I'm just going to try and type all these that you see here on my calculator. So I'll create a bracket here, okay? And then I'm going to put 8,000 rands. You can stack them up, but I just want you to see what I'm doing. And then there's a bracket. So I'm opening that bracket. There's another one. I'm opening it again. There's 1 plus. Now there's a fraction. I'll press the fraction button. On the numerator, we've got 0.10, but they said compounded monthly. So we have to have it over 12. And then I need to close my bracket. So that's basically what you're ending up with. This has to be raised to the exponent of 60, all right? Then you move sideways. You're going to have to obviously subtract that 1 that you see there. So minus 1, and then we need to close the bracket. So this is what we're ending up with as our calculation in terms of typing the story that we have here, right? So it's 8,000, and then we need to now divide all this, right? Divide all this by something exciting. So we're going to have to divide by the bottom interest there. So create a fraction. We've got 0.1, and then all this must be divided by 12. And then you close the bracket. I hope I didn't put too many brackets. Oh, there we have it. There we have it. We're ending up with an answer of 619. Okay, so 619. Okay, 619. 496. Right, 496. And the final part there is 0.5774. 0.5774. This is what you're ending up with. This is money. So the value of the sinking fund is definitely that sinking fund has inside it 619,000. Don't put a comma there, Scofield. 619,496. We're not Americans. We only put a comma after all the numbers are there. 58 cents. This is what the total amount is that we're ending up with here. So somebody who invests or deposits 8,000 into an account for 5 years every month, and they're being offered 10%, will end up with 619,000 after this entire investment. Right. Let's go to the final part of our question. They say now determine the value of X, the price of the original tractor. Right. So now we want to find the price of the original tractor. Now here's the relationship between the depreciation, inflation, and the sinking fund. So the story here is the sinking fund, right? The sinking fund, okay, is simply the amount of money due to inflation minus the amount of money due to depreciation. Just as easy as that, right? Whatever you are short of, right, to afford the new item. So what did we get as our sinking fund value? We got 619. So 619,496 point. Look at what I'm going to do. I'm going to call the full value 577, right? 5774, because you're not allowed to round off until you get to the final answers. What is the value of inflation? The inflation value that we are having here is that 2.28775. 2.28775. 2.28775x minus the depreciation value. For depreciation, we ended up with 0.32768. 0.32768x. And then we have to solve for x. Obviously, x is a common factor here, or you just take this amount of 2.28, you subtract 0.32, you're going to get a value in terms of x. And then that will have to obviously be divided on both sides in order to make x the subject of the formula. I trust your algebraic skills when it comes to this and your ability to make x the subject of the formula. So let's go back and try and find the difference between the 2.28. Remember where that one comes from. So I'm going to be naughty and go back and put that 1.18 to the power of 5. It's the old value that we got, the full amount. I just like working with original amounts because we need to have that 2.28775 and all the other decimals, they're important. So that amount minus what? Minus 0.32768, right? 0.32768. We're ending up with that 1.96. So we're getting 1.96 blah 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 x, and then you're going to divide both sides by that amount. So we're going to end up with an x value of 619. So 619, okay, 496, 619,496.55, no, 577. Backspace, 5774, divide by alphabet answer. I want to divide by the previous answer. So I press alphabet and I press answer by the equality sign. When you push the equality sign, you're getting 316,000. So this amount originally was 300 and, is it 16? Yes, 16,000. 316,000 and 057. So 057 point something. What is something? 14.14 cents. So this is the amount of this tractor if you compare it with obviously all the values that you've done. So it's a very, very nice story here. Very, very nice story that involves the sinking fund that you guys needed to know and be able to work with. So I hope you have understood what you need to do. 2 items, one depreciate, one inflates. If you've got the value, the scrap value or the book value of your old item, when you sell it, and then you just try and check the new one costs how much. The difference between the cost of the new item and the cost of the old one is what we call the sinking fund. That money you're short of is the sinking fund. We need to raise that somehow. The best way is to start a savings account where you're depositing on a periodic basis. In this case, it's going to require us to use the future value formula because we are voluntarily depositing money from zero to something. So money is growing. So in future, it must cover up this sinking fund. So we ended up with whatever we got here, and then we can be able to backtrack and find what the original price of this particular tractor was. Absolutely exciting. I hope you understood what you had to do in this particular question.